So I'll share some thoughts about amino acid precursors for mental health treatment, and then hopefully we'll have an exciting, engaging conversation. The goal is always how can we improve outcomes for our patients? And let's get started with our patients. So this is a case, and it's very common to many of us in the clinical world of psychiatry. A 36-year-old female, long history of depression. She was treated very well with medications and lifestyle, and she had the resources to eat all organic foods and go to yoga and go to therapy, and had been doing really well for many, many years, and a successful business owner. But then she got depressed again at 36, even though she had 15 years of doing really well. So she went to her PCP, and the PCP did a physical exam and did the initial blood work, which is not usual for someone complaining of depression, but they looked at B12 and thyroid, all the things that we would like in an integrative or functional space. And pretty much doctor said there's nothing wrong, but I feel terrible. So what happens? Well, in the world of mental health, we have one option, which is medications. So here the PCP started this medication train, or some people might say roller coaster. And this is a true story, a woman who I know very well. So she started off with the first medicine, an SSRI, didn't help, added the second medication, and then added the third, which was anxiety medicine, because the first two medicines were making her anxious. So the PCP didn't get anywhere. So at some point, in the old days, it was a month. Nowadays, it might be 3 months. Somebody says, oh, you got to go to a psych provider. And the psych provider started adding more medications. So we had the mood stabilizer, the antipsychotic. So we're talking 5 medications before I saw Marcia, and obviously she feels worse. So the good news, Marcia had many of the blood tests that most doctors don't do, like a B12 and thyroid and vitamin D. She had a decent workup. A dietary history. She had again, a organic, grass-fed, expensive, perfect diet. And we did a fasting plasma amino acid test. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As a psychiatrist, over the years, I have found myself more involved in the GI tract, from taste to digestion to absorption to looking at levels of micronutrients. So here you see a fasting plasma amino acid test. If you see the white box in the middle of the 50th percentile, everything to the left in the red box is low. So this patient, 36-year-old depressed patient, who was eating the perfect dietary protein on testing, had low levels of amino acids. So something's wrong with this picture. And that's what we're going to explore today, why and how to treat. It is one of the most common deficiencies I see in a psychiatric practice. It's not discussed enough, and it's not treated enough. So let's begin to understand it. I'm going to go some of these slides quickly because they're pretty simple, and because I want to save my voice for the questions. And I think you'll have access to these PDFs. This is probably 6th grade science, but certainly not appreciated in our medical community. There are micronutrients that are termed essential, like every mineral, like vitamins, like some of the fatty acids and some of the amino acids. Essential means you have to obtain them from your diet. And the brain, our most metabolically active organ, is only 2% of our body weight, but at any one time utilizing almost a quarter of our metabolic energy. So nutritional deficiencies are going to affect brain function before physical manifestations. If anyone's paying attention, you guys are burning calories and using micronutrients and your B vitamins and your minerals to focus and pay attention. So as we become deficient, it affects brain function. It seems pretty obvious, but ignored. And so in this brief discussion, we're going to chat about amino acid precursors to neurotransmitters, peptides, and hormones. So what are peptides? Well, peptides are everything, and there are thousands of them, but I guess the one that's hitting the press the most is GLP-1, right? GLP-1 is a 30 amino acid peptide that we can only make from the amino acids in our diet. So I'm going to keep coming back to this same theme. Our patient I presented, Marcia, was eating adequate protein, but she was deficient in amino acids, which means Marcia couldn't adequately make neurotransmitters, hormones that are proteins, and peptides. So here it is, her salmon from Alaska, literally, she flew it in from Alaska. You need acid and digestion to break it down to these amino acids to make these neuropeptides, whether it's GLP-1 or CCK or NPY or ghrelin or leptin or all the other hundreds that regulate mood, appetite, and serotonin, dopamine, etc. So pretty simple science. And here we can take the next step, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, phenylalanine in the diet. Again, it's essential, which means you have to eat protein to get it, is a precursor to dopamine. And tryptophan, an amino acid that you need to obtain from digesting protein in your diet to make serotonin. And all of psychiatry, every medication, is based on manipulating neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. And what I will share with you today is there are nutritional ways of manipulating neurotransmitters or adjusting neurotransmitters. And here's one example. We've known for many, many years that we can affect neurotransmitters by affecting these amino acid precursors. The one that's been studied the most is tryptophan and serotonin synthesis. We actually have this research protocol called acute tryptophan depletion, where we've used it in animal studies, we use it in human studies, and we give you a drink with all the essential amino acids, but there's no tryptophan. So we watch what happens. We see tryptophan levels in the brain drop, which we see serotonin levels drop, and then we look at behavior. And again, we've done this with animal studies and human studies, and a lot happens during these tryptophan depletion studies. It is more dramatic, I will share with you, in those with family histories of depression or anxiety or mental health challenges. But either way, we have impulsivity, aggression, executive function difficulties. There was one study where in a tryptophan depletion, there was a relapse of bulimia. So if we decrease tryptophan in the diet, we've known since the 70s and 80s that it decreases serotonin synthesis. And our integrative functional world is just asking, well, if tryptophan depletion is such a powerful tool to stimulate the onset of depression and irritability and lots of behavioral symptoms, why wouldn't we be using nutraceuticals to support the synthesis of serotonin, right? And that has been a huge part of my practice for 30 years. Now, we're going to talk about the difference between tryptophan and 5-HTP, but we do know that both tryptophan can increase serotonin levels to a certain extent, and 5-HTP can increase serotonin levels. So we have a whole host of antidepressants regulating neurotransmitters. And we have old research and clinical experience over many, many years that amino acid precursors can also increase neurotransmitters and dramatically affect mood and behavior. So I showed you one test, Marcia, the first case, but we see it all the time. Regardless of dietary intake, in our psychiatric patients, amino acid, fasting plasma amino acid test, and I find plasma much better than urinary amino acids, are often low. So why would they be low? And what does that mean? Well, there's not just one symptom. Core concepts that many of you know in functional medicine is this concept of biochemical individuality. We're always juggling that dance of our genetic vulnerability with our environmental stressors. Nutritional deficiencies are an environmental stress. So we've seen low levels of amino acids associated with fatigue. It's not listed here, but depression, anxiety, irritability, impulsivity, aggression, and mood swings. So low levels of amino acids, by definition, poor ability to make the neurotransmitters with decrease in precursor, but the symptoms could vary. But what we're trying to understand here, if we look at the testing and we have the symptoms in front of us, regardless of what they are, we need to understand why and more importantly, how to treat it, how we can help our patients. And this I hear all the time, and that's why I used that first example of someone who was eating the adequate protein. It's not necessarily dietary related. Now, it could be. As a child psychiatrist, I certainly have seen enough vegan adolescents who are just eating potato chips and pasta. And yes, they don't have adequate protein to break down to these precursor amino acids. But most of my adult patients are actually eating adequate protein. And there are other reasons that we're getting these low levels of amino acid. The one I'm going to talk about today is mostly low levels of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Other common reasons are stress, particularly acute chronic traumatic stress that kind of shuts off the GI tract. And then oftentimes it doesn't quite get back to where it's going. And our sympathetic overdrive, if we're overstimulated, scared, anxious, traumatized, the parasympathetic system just kind of shuts off its path towards digestion. And oftentimes it just doesn't regroup. And then certainly our obsession with antacids getting in the way of stomach acid. So I don't know, this book was written 25 years ago, and, it's a really well done. Jonathan Wright, one of the founders of this field of integrative medicine. Acid is just really important, and there are many, many paths to having low stomach acid, but it is the key to breaking down protein, right? So here's our little schematic. You're eating your grass-fed beef, and hydrochloric acid in the stomach stimulates the entire digestive cascade. So it tells the pancreas, okay, start making more enzymes. And it's that acid. And the acid in the stomach is so strong, it would burn a hole in the wood table, the wood desk I'm sitting at. It is very strong. It breaks down the protein to peptides to these amino acids so we can build our serotonin and dopamine, so we can modulate mood, appetite, and behavior. The punchline of what I will share with you is a strategy we've been using again for 30 years for many of the patients that we've seen across these diagnoses of fatigue, depression, anxiety, who are eating adequate protein. So the first thing we just need to assume, and we'll just take the case I brought up, Marcia, who was eating adequate protein but had low levels. So she did not have adequate hydrochloric acid in her stomach to break down this very expensive protein that she was eating. So step one is giving her the digestive enzyme with hydrochloric acid. But the real step one is here, these what I call free-form amino acids. And we'll go through this in more detail. But these are the products from Pure. I've been using Pure for many years. I used to be a consultant for them. Offices are down the street here. So that's why I'm very familiar with these Pure supplements. But amino acid levels are low. Marcia's feeling miserable. She's on 5 psychotropic medications. None of them are particularly helping. And we have an objective test that says, guess what? You're not digesting your protein. So we're going to give you the acid, the digestive enzymes, and acid to break down this expensive protein. But we also want to give her the amino acids that she's missing. And that is what's called free-form amino acids. These aren't protein powders. These are just all the essential amino acids. They're absorbed easily, quickly, with no effort. People feel better, often in days, if not a week. We utilize zinc. We'll talk about it because zinc is critical for acid and the digestive enzymes. And then we can talk more about the amino acid precursors. Tryptophan, 5-HTP, phenylalanine. Seroplus is just a 5-HTP serotonin precursor, but we can talk about all of these. But take a minute. It is a really simple strategy to support improving mood for those that we have objective testing where there are low levels of amino acid. So there's another case, and again, a patient who his career is actually taking care of himself. So he's been to every integrative psychiatrist around the country, taking many, many supplements. Every doc recommends something different, had lots of testing, but he was blessed with a strong family history of depression and addiction, multiple psychotropic medications. Nothing has helped him. And similar to Marcia, low levels of essential amino acids. Again, eating adequate diet, people throwing, Marcia didn't get a lot of supplements thrown at her. She got a lot of medicines. Larry, I'm using as an example because he got every supplement thrown at him. He went to, integrative doctors, again, very financially able to fly around the country to see Dr. Jones and Dr. Smith, experts in all A, B, and C. And they did all the testing, the mold, the B12, everything, but nobody looked at this relatively simple process of what are the essential amino acids, the precursors to these neurotransmitters. And again, Larry was, like Marcia, was easily treated with this 4 kind of step approach about optimizing amino acids. Okay, that's Larry. Here's a 65-year-old. One of the things when we talk about hydrochloric acid is levels go down pretty quickly as we age. When you look at some of the charts in Jonathan Wright's book, aging is like 30, 40, pretty dramatic decrease in hydrochloric acid. So particularly if we have inflammatory illness, and this gentleman did, alcohol use, further decrease of hydrochloric acid. And here was a urine test, and you can see some are low, some are high. My preference is the plasma amino acids. Occasionally, urine gives us something. So a little more detail, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions, because it's always exciting to be part of RUPA and now Fullscript, because we're testing, and as mental health professional, nobody tests. So we're making a huge difference, and everyone on this call can help. We look at objective findings, and it could be simple, like a vitamin D of 12, or it could be low levels of amino acid. But with that objective testing, we're not just guessing and throwing supplements the way I see on these Facebook posts where people says, Johnny's depressed, what should I do? And everyone has an answer. Well, the only answer in my book is test and understand what's going on, and then utilize the best supplements. So to repeat, the free-form amino acids, these have all the essential amino acids. You never want to use amino acid supplements that don't have tryptophan and all the essential amino acids. There are a number of products on the market that has a few amino acids or all the amino acids, but not tryptophan. And remember what I started with? A tryptophan depletion diet is how we study depression, irritability, anxiety. So make sure your amino acid powders, you need a lot of capsules to get enough, has tryptophan. And Amino Replete, these are just the pure products I mentioned. So you want to take free-form amino acids 20 or 30 minutes before meals. You don't want to mix it with protein drink like yogurt or things like that. It works quickly. Some people have a hard time mixing it in liquids. Other people tolerate it well. It's usually 3 months. People notice a difference in a few weeks. Okay, so we're giving the free-form amino acids. People feel a little better. But we got to help the original problem, which was eating adequate protein but not digesting. So we got to give the digestive enzymes. So you want to make sure you're using hydrochloric acid, betaine HCl. So some people use 2 different supplements, betaine HCl and a broad spectrum digestive enzyme. Pure has one that combines them. It just makes life easier. But a couple capsules at the beginning of every meal, certainly every protein meal. Now, zinc and copper, I think it's one of the classes I'll be doing down the road. We're going to try to do these once a month. I think people oversimplify it. The punchline for us is that zinc is critically important for making hydrochloric acid. And there's a long list of why many of our patients are deficient in zinc. It could be everything from environmental toxins to high copper, to celiac disease, to vegan diets. The list is really, really long to poor absorption, but you need zinc to make hydrochloric acid, and you need zinc as a cofactor for every other digestive enzyme. It's really pretty remarkable. And we're talking about paths to support serotonin synthesis. And many of you know that melatonin is made from serotonin. That's also a zinc-dependent process. So we don't have zinc marked up here, but you need zinc to support sleep and your circadian cycles. So zinc is critically important here. but you're also seeing all the other cofactors. So, we try to oversimplify things to make it easier to appreciate and learn that precursor amino acids affect serotonin synthesis. Precursor phenylalanine, we didn't talk about, affects dopamine synthesis. But the more complicated but critical part of understanding functional psychiatry is understanding all the other nutritional cofactors. And there could be many reasons why someone's deficient in folate or vitamin D or B6, but that would also impair this process. Zinc, I think we get a little too carried away with. I like to keep the doses under 60, maybe even 40 is the magic number for adults, and kids less. We'll talk more about zinc and copper in upcoming class. But what about these precursors? I shared with you that tryptophan is the essential amino acid, but it's also not the best supplement for long term because the brain has a feedback mechanism that tells the carrier molecules in the brain, says we have enough, and it stops bringing tryptophan into the brain to make serotonin. So 5-HTP is the intermediary, and it readily crosses into the blood-brain barrier. So we have tryptophan is the amino acid precursor, and 5-HTP is the supplement that's easy to obtain. I think it's a little overused. I think it's dosed a little too high, and I've seen just as many side effects as I've seen benefits. So the message is please go slow and titrate up with using 5-HTP. I use tryptophan for sleep, 1 to 2 grams for brief periods of times, 1 to 2 months. I don't use it long term. There's a number of potential problems. But 5-HTP in various supplements can be incredibly helpful for depression, anxiety, and pretty significant in helping deprescribing these medications and antidepressant withdrawal. So when you're on an SSRI, you create a functional deficiency of serotonin. But with the SSRI on board, you can kind of trick the brain so life is okay. But synthesis of serotonin decreases. And then for some individuals, they stop these medications and wow, their brain goes crazy, their body, the brain zaps, the insomnia, the irritability, the aggression, that they can't stop these medications. They feel addicted to them. So we slowly begin during a taper to add 5-HTP. So the supplement that we use is Sero Plus. Here it is. It's a 5-HTP as an inositol and taurine, all support serotonin, and then the cofactors. So you're not giving people 30 supplements. We're trying to give them 1 supplement. That's what I wanted to share with you. Again, really simple concept. Dietary intake is not always sufficient. Objective laboratory data is the kind of mantra in functional psychiatry. We are avoiding what our colleagues have been doing for 50 years, which is symptomatic-based medicine. You're sad, we give you an anti-SAD pill. We don't want to do that with nutritional supplements. We don't want to throw supplements at our patients and get into this game of let's try this, which is the path in psychopharmacology. As functional clinicians, as integrative and functional mental health practitioners, we don't want to guess, right? We want to test. And one of the tests, plasma amino acids, if they're low, you got to find out why. Is it dietary intake? Usually it's not. Is it low stomach acid? The most common. And then we just build a simple treatment plan, giving them the free-form amino acids, giving them the digestive enzymes. They might or might not need zinc. And depending on their symptoms, if they're depressed or anxious, they might need the amino acid precursor. And so that's the path that I wanted to share. And I think in Psychiatry Defined, our educational platform, I've come up with these kind of laws to help us think through this. You know, our grandmothers were right. You are what you eat, meaning ultra-processed foods and can affect behavior now. We have the research. You are what you don't eat, the multiple nutritional deficiencies. And then the path of you are what you digest and absorb that we talked a little bit about today, not having adequate hydrochloric acid, certainly inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, all affects absorption, and they all affect mental health. It doesn't mean everyone's going to be depressed or anxious. We have tremendous genetic vulnerabilities, and we can appreciate the role of genetics, epigenetics, and the environment, and nutritional deficiencies being a key part of the environment. So this is our year-long program training clinicians on an integrative and functional model.
Welcome to Root the Health, the best place to order, manage, and track results from over 30 different lab companies in one single place for free. It's going to take you under 2 minutes to sign up, and you can order any functional medicine lab for your client in under 30 seconds. Let me show you how it's done. So here's our beautiful interface. I'm typing in the name of my client, selecting the lab that I want to order for them, and hitting send. From there, Rupa and their amazing team handle the rest. They email the client, collect payment, and even offer an interest-free 3-month payment plan. We've also built the world's largest library of information about chronic health conditions, the lab tests that can help you find the root cause, and the evidence-based interventions that you can use to help people heal from them. It's called the Rupa Health Magazine. There, we have in-depth articles about almost any health condition you can imagine. And we give you step-by-step protocols that other clinicians have used to help their clients heal and that are verified by evidence-based sources. You should totally check it out, and it'll transform your practice. And we can't wait to see you. So make sure you sign up today at rupahealth.com.